Welcome back to another episode of the AdMob Fireside Chat series, where the mobile ads developer relations team get together to discuss the latest features and updates from the mobile ads SDK. As usual, we have Sam, Jill, and Eric with us from the DevRel team. And today we'll be talking about native ads and native templates, which are the easiest way to get started with native ads. So who knows what a native ad is?
I'll go. A native ad is a customizable ad format that will match the look and feel of your app. So with native ads, you get returned a bunch of ad assets that you present to users via the UI components that are native to the Android and iOS operating system. I think we have a doc that describes all the ad assets, right?
Yeah, we do. A bit more specifically, the native ads has a set of fields that will either be kind of text or image, starting with the headline, which is a text, like an app title, for example. The image, this will be like the primary image. So if you have an app install ad, it'll probably be like some of the screenshots for that app. This also kind of includes the media view. So some native ads will be videos or will have video assets. And so kind of that image/media content will always be available. There's also a body text, an icon image, which would be like an app icon, a call to action text for something that they should click on to install or go to a site. For app install ads, you'll have a star rating, the app store, and the cost of the app. And there might also be the advertiser text that's advertising the ad. So of these assets, these first 5 are the ones that are guaranteed to be included every time you request a Google native ad. And the only ones that have to be displayed technically is just the headline. But in practice, most apps will probably display at least the app icon and probably the call to action field in order to get the user to install or take action on that ad.
That's awesome. So we've got some documentation that we can share to help people get started. And one of the things that I kind of want to draw attention to is the process will be pretty similar across Android and iOS. But so you'll get started, and we have this nice start guide. And just as from a high level, you're going to load an ad, you're going to handle the callbacks when you receive the ad, and then you're going to display the ad, right? And so let me just show you. We'll be working today in our example that we have. We'll be in Android, but the concepts are, again, they're going to be the same on iOS. So make sure you check out our samples here on GitHub. But what I want to show you is, I mentioned that the first step is to load an ad. So here I am in our first sample here, and you'll see that when we load an ad, we provide a callback mechanism, and that callback mechanism is what actually receives our native ad object. And again, I'm showing Android, but the concept is very similar on iOS. You'll have a callback where when you successfully load an ad, you get an ad object. And so once you've defined that callback, you set it up. In this case, you can see we're saving our reference in our activity, and you'll actually have to call load ad, which is on the ad loader and kicks off this request, right? And it's also worth calling attention to the fact that there's a callback for a failure case, and in that case, you'll receive an error object. And again, these callbacks, the APIs are different, but you'll have similar callbacks for iOS and Android. Now, once you've received your ad reference, now you can actually do something with it. So again, I mentioned step 1 is loading an ad. Step 2 is displaying the ad, right? In both iOS and Android, you will display the assets that come back as part of that ad in a native ad view. And this is what this looks like on Android. But again, there's the same type of object exists on iOS. So you'll have this unified native ad view. And at this point, you have 2 choices. If you want to manually control everything, you'll go with what we call native advanced. If you want to get right to the point and just use prepackaged views that look really good, you'll use native templates. And so, but let's assume that this is maybe the first time you're seeing native ads. And so I'll show you the steps for displaying a native ad using native advanced. So you'll create the view yourself using auto layout in iOS or your layout here, your layout XML in Android Studio. You'll specify how you want everything to look. You'll provide that view in your, here you can see we've got our ad placeholder. You'll provide that view in your UI. And once you've received the ad as a callback, you basically need to tell, for all the UI assets in your ad view, you need to register those UI views with the type of asset that they'll be displaying with the native ad. And so in Android, this is what that looks like. We're basically just telling our ad view, hey, these are the views that we're intending to use for each of these different ad assets. Once you've done that, you'll have to check the actual assets themselves and assign them to your view. And you can see that here we're saying, for instance, we want to know, does this store asset exist? And if it doesn't, we want to hide the view that we've set aside for it. But if it does, we want to set it up so that we can see it, right? And that's all that we're doing here. And again, it'll be the same process in iOS. And let me run this and just show you what it looks like.
So while this is loading, I'd like to kind of call out and try to, why we're going to motivate the other option later, is that some of the complexity around rendering this native ad and integrating with the Google Mobile Ads SDK is that for every asset, you need to tell Google which one of those subviews is rendering each asset so that we can set appropriate click handlers to apply click actions, as well as you actually need to populate each view with the asset. So that's all the code that's being written there. And then as John was pointing out in that XML file for Android, for iOS, this might be done through Storyboard. You have to, of course, lay out and decide where all the margins should be and figure out how to design that ad to make it look good.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's what we're doing here. And you can see, it looks pretty good. And we have maximum flexibility this way, right? And one thing I just want to call attention to here is, we're not going over some of the specifics of the API, but we do have some specifics for video ads. And in general, you should use video ads for all your formats. They perform better. It's a better user experience. So we definitely recommend that. But let's say that we've convinced you that native ads are cool and that it's cool to have ads that are styled like the rest of your app, and you want to get started. But we understand this may be a little bit of too much of a commitment to get started right away. So that's why we've provided native templates. And so let me tell you what templates are. Native templates are prepackaged views for your native ads designed for fast implementation, easy modification, and ease of use so that you can quickly customize the look and feel of your ads, okay? They make it a lot easier to get started. And I can show you just how much they simplify here by switching into, this is the exact same project that we have, but all I've done is I've gone through and I've removed the code, I've removed the advanced code, and I've replaced it with what we need to get started with native templates. So we actually no longer need this entire XML file. We've replaced it in this file with our template view here. So that saved us that whole file of code that we wrote. And then if I go back into Java, I can show you all the UI code. So here's that same method, populate unified native ad view. We no longer need to worry about the native ad view. We still receive the ad via the same mechanism that we did before. And we've replaced, let me just have a side-by-side comparison here. We've replaced all the registration and the null checking and laying out logic. That's all been abstracted by native templates. So here, all I need to do is I need to get the view and I need to set the ad. So let's look at what that looks like. There we go. And so that's actually a small view. Let me change that because we give you a small template and a medium template. But this is another reason why it's super cool to use these templates, because I can just do this with one word change. There we go. And so it saved me from having to manually lay everything out.
So John, that was really awesome. And we showed like 2 different demos with just a line of code. It's almost, some might even say it's magical. But really, of course, behind every good magic trick is how it's done. So can you talk a bit about like, how do we actually do that and reduce all those lines of code? Like what is native templates? Is it like an SDK or something, or
Definitely, definitely. So they're basically just files. We wanted it to be as simple as possible to get started. And so we don't even you don't even have to download a library. In the case of Android, it's an Android Studio module. So you'll just import that. And in terms of how they work, they just do the logic and checking that you would have had to manually do, but they do it for you. So what's cool about that, because they're just files and they're not libraries, is if you want to go in and you want to make a change, you've got the files themselves right here. They're just another module in your app. And so you can go into here and you can see this is the XML that you would have manually had to write. We wrote for you. And now you just drag into your project and you can configure it however you want. And so we give you 2 templates out of the box, but with these templates, you can take them and customize them. You can make your own templates. You can, do whatever you want with them. And the other thing that I'll show you, just because I'm thinking about it, is, and because I have the docs up, if you don't want to go through to manually edit the XML, we actually, on top of everything, we give you an API. So we give you this API where you can just create a styles dictionary in code. And we make it really easy with, we've given you utility methods and all sorts of things where you can define the font and the colors and all, a ton of different style options. And you just set up that dictionary and pass it along, and it'll respect those values. So it should be pretty flexible right out of the box. I did have another thing that I kind of wanted to talk about. We spent some time putting together a playbook. Eric, do you want to talk about that a little bit?
The playbook addresses some use cases for how you can style your native ads and some ideas to show you what native ads can do and the power of them. So yeah, some of the things I wanted to highlight here is kind of defining native ads again, but more particularly like how you can show them in the context of your app. One popular example that we've seen across many implementations is an in-feed style. So within scrollable content, you can kind of make native ads look very similar to the other types of content on your screen. So in this case, if you have like a food and drink app, having avocado land and salad eats, these look almost exactly the same. If there was no image, or if avocado land actually does have an image up top. Other than the fact that this is an ad and has a star rating, it kind of is engaging and looks exactly like every other piece of content. And users are more likely to engage with that content. And so this is an example of an in-feed ad that kind of uses video and has a larger size ad. But you can also make ads, experiences with smaller ads as well. So I think this is another example. This is still using a fair bit of screen real estate, but does not have that main image asset. And so you can end up getting something smaller profile if you want to render the same type of thing in feed. You can also, here's another example of an app install ad that's not in a feed, but kind of in a pause screen. Maybe you have something at the bottom, and this is rendering just the app icon, headline, star rating, and an install button. And so here's another kind of smaller profile ad that kind of matches the color and theme of the rest of your app. This is the type of thing that you couldn't get with a banner ad, for example.
I was just going to say, it's worth pointing out, basically the research that informed this is what we use to build native templates. And so you'll notice, for instance, the Medium template looks a lot like the in-feed app.
This first one. Yep.
Yeah.
The benefit of native templates is you get very similar designs, exactly what is kind of shown here as some best practices of things that we've noticed have done well in the market. I think the last example I really wanted to show was just another app install ad, but in a bit of a larger format that has the video or media asset up top. And so there's really a lot of different options rendering native ads with a lot of different sizes in feeds and outside of feeds that different types of apps can take advantage of.
Do we want to talk about how this works with mediation?
Yeah, I can take that. So with mediation, I did want to point out that whether you use templates or native advanced, they kind of act the same way, and any ads returned from any mediation networks can be rendered the same way through templates or advanced. Like, it's still the same mechanism. So which approach you choose there doesn't affect your decisions regarding mediation. One other important thing to note with mediation is the assets that are returned. So at the start of this video, we talked about what assets are always guaranteed by Google. If these other ad networks might have different assets and they might not necessarily map 100%, But we do, when we mediate, we try to make sure that in order for that mediation to be successful, we try to validate that every ad network has each of those required assets, or each of those assets that was guaranteed to be returned, the always included ones, that they're there for these mediation networks as well, so that the ads you design that depend on the media view or the headline or call to action, that those assets are all there for every single ad. But in case there are any discrepancies, I would recommend in our developer docs, which we'll link in the description below, we have partner guides for every ad network partner. And it talks about like what assets they include, or any like corner cases where maybe sometimes they don't, or this asset is missing for this partner, so that you can make sure that if your native ads are planning to render a specific asset, that it'll work well for each mediation partner you use.
Yeah, I think that's really helpful to know that it should work with mediation. You just got to watch out for the assets there. Awesome. So native ads are available now in GA. Everybody can use them on iOS and Android. Take a look. I also want to call your attention to some of our documentation. We've got a get started guide that shows you how to load an ad. We've got an advanced guide that shows you how to set up and manually create your own views. We've got a guide for templates. Please take a look at those. In addition, there's that Help Center article that shows you which assets you can expect depending on which type of ad you're seeing. And that's it, unless folks have questions.
Yeah, John, I have a question. So do we have restrictions or guidelines on how we should render the ads in terms of like the sizing and things like that?
Yeah, we do. That's a great question. So this is an article, and we'll put the link in the description, but it really goes over the size requirements, the layout requirements, the requirements to make it clear that it's an ad attribution requirements, ad choices, location requirements, things like that. So definitely take a look at this because it's going to make sure that you stay compliant.
And John, can you also talk about if I'm a publisher and I use banner ads today, like should I use native? Should I get started with that? Like when would I decide to use native or banner?
Yeah, that's a good question. There's no doubt that banner is the easiest way to get started if you haven't used any ads at all. But if you care a lot about the look and feel of your ads and you want an experience that's really integrated into your app, that's when you should start thinking about native, using native over banner. It takes a little more time to integrate native ads effectively. You have to make sure that they look like they're styled like the rest of your app. And of course, you have to make sure they're policy compliant. But what you get in exchange for that attention to detail is the flexibility, right? And they look like an integrated experience. So those are things that you don't really get from banner ads. And basically, if the reason we have templates in the first place is if you want sort of the power of templates, but you want to just get started right away, as though they were banner ads, and that's why we have templates. So you can just bring them into your project, load an ad, put the ad in the template, and you've got a good head start.
Also, when we're doing testing on our implementation, I know with other ad formats like the banner and interstitials and so on, you have the ability to put your app into test mode by whitelisting, sort of registering your test device, and then you get a test mode label at the top of the ad. So is that something that we can see in native ads as well?
Yeah, definitely. So actually, that just comes down as part of the headline asset. So I don't know if you can see my screen, but here we're in test mode. As you said, it doesn't add a label anywhere, but it does put it as part of the actual text in the headline. So when I set the string on this view, the test ad just becomes a part of that view.
That's cool. And I want to ask, like, how flexible are the templates? So are the small and medium templates fixed in size? And I know that not all types of assets are required. So does template change in size if some assets are not present?
Yeah, they do. So what's really cool is to go back to our project here. These are defined as aspect ratios, basically. And so it doesn't matter. It doesn't really matter the width of the view that you want to use them in. So you can see if I go here, I'm just saying match the width. of the parent view, right? And so they're totally flexible, and the same concept exists on iOS, where they scale and the aspect ratio stays the same, but they scale to fit whatever you put in them. And then regarding the assets themselves, if you're interested in sort of customizing that, you can look in the actual, here we've got our template view class. And again, that's the benefit of them being files or modules is you just go in and edit how you want things to be handled. But you can kind of customize that logic here, because I mean, this is what the templates are. Is basically we've taken all this stuff from advanced and we put it in a file for you that does everything for you, so that you can just go in and make changes.
Cool. That looks very convenient. Thanks.
Any other questions, team, or did we cover it?
Yeah, nothing else from my end.
Good.
Awesome. Well, thanks everybody in DevRel for joining us, and thanks everybody for watching. We hope you found this information helpful and that you like these videos. So please feel free to share your thoughts and questions in the comments section. We do take a look at that. And if you haven't already, we encourage you to subscribe to the AdMob channel, because that's where we're going to be putting out more content like this. So until we see you next time, thanks.